Hello everybody, my name is Brandon. Welcome back to Cinefessions, where we talk all things media. I am so happy to report that I have finally seen the latest entry in the Scream franchise, thanks to it being streaming on Paramount Plus. My wife and I ended up watching this last night. So the fifth entry in the Scream franchise, not Scream 5, no, this is simply Scream 2022. So I was actually not even a Paramount Plus subscriber until very recently. They had this deal going on where you could get like their ad-free version for $2 a month for the first 3 months. So if I watch nothing else on that platform, then it was definitely worth it because I got to watch Scream. So that made it all worthwhile. But anyway, I have been waiting to see this one since it hit, for years now, since it hit theaters. We never go to the movie theater. So that didn't happen. I was looking at the release calendar and realized that, man, this thing doesn't come out for like a month. I think it's like April 16th, I believe, when it comes out on 4K and Blu-ray. And that was just too long to wait. I was getting impatient. And so my wife was like, where can we find this to rent it digitally? And I was looking, and that's when I realized, hey, it's available on Paramount Plus, which is part of our subscription. So last night we turned it on after we put my daughter to bed, and oh my gosh, what a crazy almost 2 hours. And I cannot wait to share my thoughts on this movie with you guys. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to talk about my thoughts on Scream 2022. So if you guys, and I will point out, this is going to be completely spoiler free. No spoilers in my reviews unless I say otherwise, but typically there's no spoilers in my reviews. So if you guys are interested in my thoughts on Scream 2022, please give this video a like down below. That engagement really does help me out. But with that said, let's not waste any more time at all. Let's dive right in to my review of Scream from 2022. So Scream is actually directed by two directors, and I'm going to look at their names because they are difficult. Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. So those two might be familiar to you if you've seen Ready or Not, which I actually have down here somewhere, but I've actually not gotten a chance to watch that one yet. So this was my first experience with both of these directors, and I had no idea what to expect coming into this one. So before I dive into like my thoughts on the film itself, let me just talk a little bit about my love for the Scream franchise, because this has always been near and dear to my heart. I will point out I do have the original Scream on 4K upstairs, but these were down here, so it's just easier. But I remember seeing the original Scream when it hit VHS. I watched it probably at my uncle's house, if I'm guessing. I don't remember exactly, but I loved it the first time I saw it. I saw Scream 2 also had to be when it hit VHS because I wasn't going to the theater. I was born in 86, so I was like 10, 11 years old when these all started coming out. And then Scream 3, for some reason, I was able to convince my dad to take me to the movie theater and go watch that one. And I just talked about my dad in movies recently in my last haul video. Like, he doesn't do movies, and so getting him to take me to a film was pretty notable. And so I remember Scream 3 was one of those. And I remember not actually liking the movie when I first saw it, which might not be that surprising given that it's Scream 3. It's the least liked movie in the franchise. But on subsequent viewings, I've seen it more times than I can count now. I actually love Scream 3 just as much as I like the rest of the series. So I think it's a really strong trilogy. And then Scream 4 was coming out. Actually, I was in grad school when this one came out, and my buddy was also a huge Scream fan. And so we went opening night, I think it was, to see Scream 4, and I loved it from the get-go. That movie was so much fun. It was just a really good way to bring back this franchise. And now we're kind of dealing with the same idea here. We are now 25 years after the events of the original Scream, which is just a little bit mind-blowing. But we are going to be, introduced to a new cast of characters in this one, much like we were with Scream 4. The other thing that makes Scream so near and dear to my heart is that it's really one of the first horror franchises that I was discussing with other people. I was just of the right age, and I remember talking about this, not so much with my school friends, but it was actually my little sister's best friend's mom. She was young. I don't know exactly how old, probably younger than I am right now. But she was big into horror movies as well. And I remember talking with her about it all the time. And she went to go see Scream 3 a couple days before me. And I remember as soon as I was done, I had to call her and tell her my thoughts about it. So it's just one of those first like horror franchises I remember really having an impact on me. And it's kind of like what really started my love into the horror genre. And so because of that, like the Scream movies all the way up through number 4, I have special memories of each of them. And I just love this franchise. And so how does Scream 2022, which I'll just refer to as Scream, I might even call it Scream 5 every once in a while, even though it really is not called Scream 5. I understand that, but just to make it a little bit quicker. But anyway, how does this one hold up in compared when you compare it to the rest of the franchise? Well, let's talk about that a little bit. So like I already said, this one does pick up 25 years after the original. We have our standard opening Scream scene, and it still involves a landline, believe it or not. I don't know, other than my parents, I don't know anyone who has a landline anymore, but the family in this movie does. And so they have their cell phone and the landline playing, going back and forth. And so it's just a really cool opening scene. We get our, opening kind of attack, and then the movie picks up from there. We are actually, our main character, our Sydney of this movie is our opening character's sister. And so that's, and then her friend group obviously plays a big role in this because that's how these movies work. And so eventually with this new group of people trying to figure out what's going on, they get in contact with Dewey, because you cannot have a Scream movie without Sydney, Dewey, and Gale Weathers. And of course, those 3 legacy characters are brought back in. So it kind of just picks up from there, and it's a Scream movie, so you kind of know what to expect. It's a slasher. Whodunit? Which of these characters is the bad guy? Is there more than one this time around like normal, or did they change things up a bit? And so that's kind of the questions you're asking yourself as you go through this. So one of my biggest questions heading into this one, because I did everything I could to avoid all trailers and just everything I could about it. They didn't need to sell me on the movie. I knew I was going to see it. So I avoid all of that when it's already a movie I know I want to see. And so I didn't know, like, is this a remake because it's called simply Scream? Is this a sequel? Because from the posters, you can see that there are returning characters. Is this a reboot of this franchise? Like, what is this? I had no idea. Well, it's really fun because in this, in typical Scream fashion, the movie buff kind of explains what it is in its own movie. And they use the term requel, which I thought was perfectly fitting for what this is. So this is which is a mix of remake and sequel. And that's exactly what this is. So, a remake / reboot and sequel. I think in this case, it's more of a mix of a reboot and a sequel as opposed to a remake. But, it reminded me very much of Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, which is top of mind because I just watched that one last month. But it's very similar because you have returning legacy characters, so it is technically a sequel, but then you introduce this new cast of characters, just like Gen Z, diverse cast of characters, just like you had Jay and Silent Bob. You now have that in this version of Scream, but it is wholeheartedly a sequel. It ties into all the previous lore, and that's something I loved about this movie was how it tied itself into the original 4 movies, mostly that original one very, very well. And also some other horror movies of, more recent than what we had in the past. And so I loved that about it because just those nods and those homages to the earlier films in this franchise and then some other horror movies that I just love. I thought that was so much fun to kind of spot those as you're going through this. And actually, there's a really cool Easter egg in this one that is a reference to Scream 4, which I didn't even catch it, but my buddy asked me about it after the fact, and he told me what it was, so I had to go back, and it's like, oh my God, that is awesome. And so I'm not going to spoil it, of course, but just be on the lookout because there are these really cool Easter eggs throughout this movie. And I love that aspect of it. It just made it so much fun to watch as you're going through it. I think the main purpose of doing a requel, as they call it, is so that you have the original legacy cast. So that appeals to like the old people like me who were around for the original trilogy and so on. And that's what catches our attention. That's why we want to see the movie. And so you keep that title in there as well. Scream. We know this franchise. We love it. We want to come back and see it. But then you have this younger cast as well, because you need to get new people into this franchise. When the original Scream movies came out, like these Gen Z, at least the actors, and I'm sure the people that they're trying to appeal to, they weren't even necessarily born yet, right? Like they could have been 99, 2000. I know some of the actors were like 99 and 2000. So that's the age that is being, that's the target audience age. And because of that, it helps bring in this new audience who may not have seen the originals. And I think you avoid that number 5, because if you're someone who doesn't know this franchise like you and I likely do, then you think to yourself, man, I have to watch 4 movies to get into this? Forget that. And I'm sure they were trying to avoid something like that. And so I understand why they did it. Is this Scream 5? Yeah, it's Scream 5, but for marketing purposes, I feel like they decided to go with the Scream, just like Halloween. Back in 2018, they went with Halloween. It's very similar idea there as well. These are all what the movie considers requels, and I don't dislike them at all. I love reboots, I love remakes, and so requels, they're right up there as well. I really enjoyed what Halloween did, and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, and what this one did. Let's talk about some of the pros on this one. And the first thing I need to discuss is something that I've talked about a couple other times on the channel. I love when there is brutality out of nowhere, just violence hitting completely unexpectedly. Now, mind you, the first time I ever noticed this, I guess, was in the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. The characters having a conversation, and then boom, it's just like an explosion of brutality. And it was so memorable, and I loved it so much that that's one of my favorite aspects. If you can pull that off effectively, like Scream does, like Joker did, then you've sold me. I am all in on that. And that's exactly what happens here. And not just once. I'm talking a few times. There are just moments of unexpected brutality. Now, mind you, this is not Joker. This is Scream. This is a slasher franchise. I know to expect violence and it to be brutal, but it's the timing of those items that really got me. And it works so well here. The brutality is so effective because I didn't see it coming when it did. When the killer is revealed is one of those moments, and it's just jarring. And I love that because it's so memorable to me. So my first pro is just how well they handle these kind of unexpected moments of violence. It's just so cool. Something else I absolutely loved about this movie is the cast. So outside of our original 3, yes, they are amazing at what they do. Frankly, they are icons of the genre thanks to their roles in this franchise. And so they're still great. They're doing exactly what they do, and they do it really, really well here again. But on top of that, we have our new cast, and I loved them. I thought they did such a good job with everything that they were given. It felt very fitting for this franchise. It was clear that even if the actors weren't, it was just clear that these characters belonged in this world. And so whether they knew it or not, they were playing them kind of, I don't know if the right way is the correct term to state there, but they were playing them in a way that I appreciated, because it felt like characters that you would see in our earlier Scream films. So I loved that about it. I was actually surprised how much I was laughing during this movie, because some of the jokes that these characters are delivering, they land really well, at least for me. I know comedy is probably the most divisive thing on the planet. The thing I can find absolutely hilarious, the next person can find just stupid, and vice versa. So for me, I thought it was hilarious. I think the one-liners that they were delivering, just kind of the whole self-referential thing that they were doing with these characters, I thought it was really cool. It just felt realistic to what's in my head as Gen Z, which again is going to be so out of touch given who my age and everything, but it just felt appropriate to me. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I thought the acting was just excellent across the board. I loved that this movie felt kind of like the Jay and Silent Bob reboot, where it's almost like the first movie done again, but with so much more added on top of it, including years and years, decades of history tossed on top of it. It was so respectful to what came before it, but it's still it definitely took advantage of some of the things that we've come to expect in the Scream franchise. And I loved that about it. And so that was something I really enjoyed, was just how much it felt like specifically the original film. And again, that's not a negative. I'm talking about that in a positive aspect. I think they did that really well and really respectfully. So outside of those aspects, the other thing I need to touch on is just This film felt like it was a product of the torture genre from the mid-2000s. There was so much blood, so much brutality and violence in this that it was shocking. You don't see that a ton nowadays, but like it was, par for the course back then when Hostel and Saw and all these other movies like that were coming out. That was what you would expect. But the Scream franchise, while it always has had its gorier moments, to me, this one kind of takes the cake. Like they do, yes, there are some CGI effects in this. You can tell it, I guess, but it doesn't look bad by any stretch. But like knives through cheeks, like just so, I don't know, brutal. The amount of stabbing, I think, is important as well. It helps just helps make it feel more violent, and in turn, makes you cringe a little bit more. At least it did me. And they just go to town on some of these kills. The kills were awesome. I loved that aspect of it. I am, given my age, I graduated high school in 2004. I am a child of the torture genre, and so seeing this kind of what felt like a throwback to that was amazing. And I did not expect that at all. So while I am not saying that the rest of the Scream franchise is tame by any stretch, to me, this one kind of tops the list in terms of the violence of this movie and the gore in the film. And I loved that about it. That is so much fun. That's one of the reasons I love slasher films. Like, bring on the gore, bring on these effects, show me what you can do on the makeup side of the house. Like, I love that. And so this was so much fun. And that was just another reason why. If there's anything that I need to point out about the movie that I didn't love necessarily, there is one character who has some visions, I guess, as she's going through this film. And it's very clear she's dealing with something mentally. And it just felt a little bit odd. Now, all things considered, I thought they handled it relatively well. I loved because the visions were dealing with a legacy character. So I loved that we got that character back in the franchise. But the way it went about it was just a little bit odd, I guess, is the best word I can use to describe it. It didn't kill the movie by any stretch of the imagination. It didn't even really hurt it all that much. It's just something that kind of stood out as maybe they could have gone about this in a different way. I love bringing this legacy character back, but was there a different, maybe more effective way to do that? So while it didn't kill it by any stretch, it was definitely something I noticed as kind of one of the only negatives I could really call out about the film. And I will mention that I have heard some complaints about the low body count in this, but honestly, I didn't even notice that. Just because the action is so great, whether it's a kill or if it's just an attack, it's still awesome when they do it. And so because it was just so fast and furious, I think the pacing makes up for maybe a lower body count than what we're used to. And I had no issues with that at all. I didn't even notice it as I was watching the film. And so that aspect of the film was nothing that I would have considered a negative at all. I think the pacing more than makes up for it. So the best compliment I can give Scream 2022 is that it feels like a Wes Craven directed Scream film. And that is I did not expect that at all. I for sure thought this was going to be a notably different film than the rest of the franchise. But I think the way they kind of play on this original film so much, it really helps ground the film in this franchise. Not only are they paying homage to it, but they're doing it in the most respectful way imaginable. And I think both these directors have such a love and admiration for what Wes Craven has done with this franchise, and it comes out in every aspect of this film. I absolutely loved this movie, and I am so glad I didn't wait another month to watch it, because I loved it. I'll probably watch it again before it comes out on home media, but day one, I am grabbing this one on 4K. The question now is, am I going Steelbook, or am I just going to go with the slipcover version? I'm not sold either way yet, but I loved this, and I cannot wait to revisit this. This is one of my all-time favorite franchises, and Scream 2022 did nothing but build on that legacy and make it even stronger than it was prior. So I am going to give Scream from 2022 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, so those are my thoughts on the latest entry in the Scream franchise, and I honestly don't really know if my thoughts are controversial or not? Like, do people like this movie? Do they hate it? I don't really know across the board. I know my buddy liked it, but that's all I've really talked to about this film because I've been waiting to watch the movie before talking with anyone about it. I hate spoilers and I didn't want any, so I was doing my best to avoid that. But let me know down in the comments below, now that I've seen this, what did you guys think of Scream 2022? Do you think it lived up to the legacy that Wes Craven has built over these, 25 years? Or did it fall a little flat for you? And if it did, why? What didn't work for you in this one? I would love to hear some dissenting opinions if they exist, but you don't have to disagree just to disagree, of course. If you agree with me, that's fine too. Either way, I'd absolutely recommend, if you are a fan of this franchise, give this one a watch. I can't promise you're going to love it as much as I did, but there's definitely that possibility. I think it is just really well done. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what yours are down in the comments below. And most importantly, if you guys did enjoy this video, please give it a like down below. That engagement really does help me out. And like I always say, I don't just talk movies, I talk all things media, be it books, movies, video games, graphic novels, manga. If it's media related, I'm interested in it. And if you are too, you might consider subscribing. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching, and I want to encourage you to consume some media today. I'll catch you next time.